This is perhaps the most famous part of Tanya, according to the Rebbe, that the Rebbe would instruct many people to read on a daily basis. It comes from chapter 41. I'll just say from the beginning of chapter 41, and just briefly, I'll link to you where you can find the text in its entirety. And it says like this, it begins like this, I'll say only in English. One must, however, constantly bear in mind what is the beginning of divine service, as well as its core and root. Previously, the Alter Rebbe was talking about the love of God and how important the love of God is. Without a true love of God, you can't come to serve God. But now he's taking the other side. This means, although fear is the root of turn away from evil, and love is the root of do good, nevertheless it is not sufficient to awaken the love alone to do good. But at the very least, one must first arouse the innate fear which lies hidden in the heart of every Jew, not to rebel against the supreme King of Kings, the Holy One Blessed be He, as stated above, so that this fear should manifest itself in the heart, or at least in the mind. The author is making a distinction here. Generally the question is asked, it says, "Behafta es Hashem Elokecha." God commands you to love Him. So we ask, how can you command on a feeling? If I love you, God. If I don't love you, I don't love you. You can't tell me to love you. You can't force someone to love you. So the Alter Rebbe explains that basically this commandment is coming to teach you you're to engender thoughts of love towards God. That God provides all your needs for you. God protects you. He shields you. He blesses you. Everything good in your life comes from God. When you engender these types of thoughts mentally, intellectually, in your mind will be born a love of God. Same thing with fear. So even though if it's not in your heart, at least it'll be in your mind. This is the Alter Rebbe's main premise in his Opus Magnum, that the mind will rule over the heart. So as long as your thoughts are in the proper place, eventually your heart too will become rectified and sanctified to God. This means that he should at least contemplate in his mind the greatness of the Blessed Ein Sof and his kingship, which extends to all worlds, both higher and lower, and he fills all the worlds, and encompasses all the worlds. As it is written, "Do I not fill the heaven and the earth?" Yet he leaves aside the creatures of the higher worlds and the creatures of the lower worlds. So why he uniquely bestows his kingship upon his people Israel in general, and upon him in particular, this one person. For man is obligated to say, "For my sake was the world created." And he, for his part, accepts his kingship upon himself, that he be king over him, to serve him and to do his will in all kinds of servile work. Basically, this concept of a person says, "For me the world was created," could lead to a sense of arrogance. But it's true, and how does the Alter Rebbe interpret it? He says like this: when you say, "For me the world was created," understand that God created this entirety of creation simply to see how you would serve Him. And in this respect, you'll come to understand that every part of nature testifies against you, like Moshe Rabbeinu says in Hazinu, that eventually he's going to have the heavens and the earth testify against the Jewish people. And these are eternal witnesses against us, how we behave, how we think, how we speak, and how we act towards each other. And once you realize the whole world's created just for you, and God is really just making this world to see how you develop and refine yourself throughout the history of creation, mankind, and throughout the history of your life on a personal level, then you can really instill within yourself a sense of fear of God, a true fear of God. Now this is the famous quote that people don't notice a lot. Why did the Rebbe say this? If you look at the way the Tanya was split up in the year, this is actually the Rebbe's birthday section. And behold, God Himself stands over him, and the whole world is full with His glory. He scrutinizes him in particular, and searches his reins and heart, to see if he is serving him as befitting. Therefore he must serve him in his presence with awe and fear, like one standing before the king. One must meditate profoundly and at length on this concept, according to the capacity of apprehension of his brain and thought, and the time he has available. The Rebbe always makes note that he understands that there's differences in his students. Some can contemplate on these issues at length, and some don't have the intellectual capacity and can only do it a little bit at a time before they lose their patience. Before he engages in the study of Torah or the performance of commandments, such as putting on talit or tefillin. It continues, I think now it's going to get specific. Sorry about this. And it says, eventually, I apologize for this necessary interruption in your learning. That's what happens when you don't have the book and you have to use the internet. But the book does provide an excellent translation. Okay, so he should also reflect how the light of the Blessed Ein Sof, which encompasses all worlds and pervades all worlds, and which is identical with the higher will, is clothed in the letters and wisdom of the Torah. In this way, when you study Torah, you'll have a appropriate appreciation, a proper appreciation of what the words you're saying really are and where they actually emanate from. The power of speech is a very powerful gift. We can use it to talk about things of nonsense. We can use it to elucidate godly concepts further in this world. And when you realize you're opening a Torah, and the Torah is actually God's words, as it were, as they are espoused to man, and how man, like Moses and the future prophets, would record them, and the sages of the Gemara would record them, then your appreciation of the gift of speech becomes more refined, and you understand exactly why you have the ability to speak. And with this understanding, your own speech will become more refined. You'll be more careful with your speech. Or in the tzitzis and tefillin, meaning God's presence in the tzitzis and tefillin, as though, as through his recitation, or by wearing recitation of the Torah, or by wearing talis and tefillin, he draws upon himself his blessed light that is over the part of God above, which abides in his body. He's talking about the nefesh elokis, the second soul of the Jew, that it may be absorbed and nullified in his blessed light. Specifically through tefillin, he should intend that the attributes of wisdom and understanding, which are in his divine soul, should be nullified and absorbed into the attributes of wisdom and understanding of the blessed Ein Sof, these being clothed in particular in the passage of Kadesh and Ve'eki Yeviecha, the last two passages of Shema. That is to say, that he should use the wisdom and understanding that are in his soul for God alone. Similarly, he should intend that the attribute of Dat, which is the connection of intellectual concepts to the emotion part of the human experience, in his soul, which includes both the chesed, kindness, and gevur, severity, fear and love in his heart, be nullified and absorbed into the attribute of the higher knowledge, Dat Elyon, which comprises kindness and severity, and in which is clothed in the passage of Shema and Ve'eh im Shema, the other passage of Shema. This accords with the statement of Shulchan Aruch that while putting on tefillin, one should intend to make one's heart and brain subservient to God. And while putting on tzitzit, one should bear in mind what is written in the Zohar, namely to draw upon himself his blessed kingdom, which is a kingdom over all worlds, to focus God's kingdom specifically over ourselves through this mitzvah. This is similar to the commandment, you should surely set a king over yourself. In such a case, even though after all this meditation no fear and dread descends upon him in a manifest manner in his heart, nevertheless, since he accepts the kingdom of heaven upon himself and draws upon himself the fear of him in his conscious thought and rational volition, and this submission is beyond a doubt a sincere one, for the nature of all Jewish souls not to rebel, it is the nature of all Jewish souls not to rebel against their blessed holy king, then the Torah studies or the commandment performs because of his submission and because of the fear that he has drawn into his mind are termed complete service, like all service performed by a slave for his master or king. On the other hand, if one's, I'm going to stop here, I don't want to just read from the text. So basically, the understanding is that once you realize the whole world was created for you, and what does this mean? The whole world is created so God can look into you, into your soul, into your actions, into your thoughts, into your speeches, into how you interact with this universe, to see if it's proper in accordance with his will, in accordance to his Torah, and what the teaching he's trying to give you to better yourself and to better the world around you. Then you can start instilling, at least intellectually, a real fear of God when you realize that all of creation is a witness against you. And once you have this intellectually down, it will eventually, the Alter Rebbe says, draw down into your heart. And even if it doesn't draw down into your heart, so you don't actually feel a physical fear of God. On the flip side, it says that the thought of God should make you happy, like the thought of seeing an old friend. Like before you go to pray, you should become happy. How do you do it? Picture you just saw an old friend you haven't seen in a long time. Similarly, is God to you. He's your constant friend. He's always with you. So if you have this in mind, you'll become happy, and you'll feel it in your heart. So similarly, and conversely actually, by fear, once you realize God is constantly observing all your thoughts, all your speech, and all your actions, it will intellectually generate fear, and this will eventually lead to emotional fear. And even if it doesn't, the author says, because you made this intellectual calculation and because you prepared yourself, it's as if the fear was a genuine fear. There's something the Rebbe encouraged many people to learn every single day. These, I think, 12 lines from Vehine Hashem Tzavlav, I think, or maybe from the beginning of the parak, I'm not sure. And it's something that if you haven't seen it once, it's at least worth to go over the text the first time, because it really does instill with you a true fear of God, something in this generation which is, of course, fallen to the wayside. We're so caught up in love and being permissive and accepting, and we forget that the basis of service to divinity is fear. That's why there's 365 prohibitive commandments and only 248 positive commandments. The general way to serve God is by abstaining from the world, by not doing things. That's why, in my opinion, there's more negative commandments than positive commandments. Of course, we're to serve God with joy, and we serve God with all our being and with everything that we have. But generally, the way God set up the world, there's more things we're not to do than things we are to do. And when you start practicing restraint, like self-restraint, when it comes to things like masturbation or speaking idle talk or speaking slander, you see exactly how tricky it is and how much of a self-mastery it is. And these are things that are really challenging in life. Not to do more push-ups or to dive in more or to learn more Torah Lahavdil. Those are also good, but the real trick in life you'll find over self-mastery is in the arena of restraint. And this is something we see just from the number of positive commandments versus negative commandments. Thank you so much, and God bless.